This is our final video on persuasive essays, and this one will be looking at the concluding paragraph. So just as we've done before, we've talked about strong introductions that set up your thesis, your contention, draw the reader in, make them want to read your essays. The next we talked about was well-argued and logical body paragraphs, how to make them support that thesis, make them informative. So today we're going to look at the concluding paragraph, which is the final chance to stress your point and the last thing that someone will read. So it is really important to leave them with an impression. So we've looked at the old analogy of an essay being a bit like a hamburger. So we've had the first bit of bread, we've had the filling, which has fleshed it all out, made it palatable. Now we're going to have that final piece, and the whole thing will fall apart unless you have that final bit at the end, that final piece of bread that holds it together. So in our good conclusion, we need not something that will just restate the main point of an argument, but it needs to bring something new to the table and end up with a strength and a resolution. Make the readers remember it. Readers or listeners, if they're listening to it, remember best the first and the last thing that is stated. So you need to have an appropriate amount of time and give an appropriate amount of effort to craft not only a meaningful introduction, but also a really strong and resonant conclusion. You need to make, this is your final opportunity to make an impact. So one way to write a strong conclusion is to restate the thesis and main points of an essay, but then attempt to leave them with a strong impression, one that they're going to remember in a good, solid, clinching argument or statement. Do not introduce any new information in the conclusion. That's the time is gone for entering that sort of information. So what do we do? If we're going to restate the thesis, it's not about copying the main topic verbatim. Instead, we've got to write it in a new way, a fresh way, turn it around a little bit, but remind them of the original thrust of the argument, the original thrust of the essay in the introduction. When we summarize main points, we don't put in a lot of detail. They've read the detail. The detail was in your body paragraph. So this, just in that, you're here, you're just supposed to be briefly running down all the major points you've discussed in your essay, just to keep it in the reader's mind. So if we're restating the thesis and then summarizing the main points, how do we go about it? The first thing you should be doing is going back over what you've put in your essay or the outline of your essay. You need to get your thoughts organized before writing your concluding paragraph. You need to go back and really make sure you remember and you've looked at closely what you have written. So you do this by rereading the rest of the paper, essay, or the plan you made before writing it. You should be able to pick out the key arguments, the key points in the body of your writing, the body paragraphs, and the opinion that you first put in your introductory paragraph. So just look at the bones, not the detail. Some people in the past have printed out a copy and then got out highlighters and circled and highlighted the main points and used that to help them. Okay, so if we're not repeating verbatim, but restating new idea, reminding people, how should we do that? Well, if your introduction said regular exercise is the best way to improve personal health, in the conclusion you might restate that by saying everyone's health can be improved with regular exercise. Now, it's almost the same, but it's not exactly the same. Unless you're a good writer and you use repetition as a particular way of pushing your point, unless you're a very good writer, it's good to steer away from exact copies. When you're summarizing the main points, you may use some different words, but you summarize the key arguments, the key points, the important keywords from each of your body paragraphs. So you can try what's called parallel sentences, joining sentences up together using a in a concluding paragraph, they can help organize information in a way that allows you to avoid writing too much, allows you to avoid writing too much detail. So if we're using that exercise scenario, regular exercise reduces stress, improves your sleep, and promotes your weight loss. Now, you can tell exactly what were in the 3 body paragraphs there. The first one would have been about stress and stress reduction. The second one would have been about getting a good night's sleep, improving sleep patterns. And the third body paragraph would have been about weight loss. And it's simple. Strong, simple language is best. It drives the point home in a straightforward way, is much more assertive. Too much detail can lose the point. Too much detail, such as lengthy descriptions, can be distracting. So the simpler way you can say something is better. And avoid being too obvious when you're writing an essay. I know there is nothing inherently wrong with saying something like to conclude or to summarize. It's not wrong, but it's not a good way to write. Try and restate your ideas in a different way. In some ways, it would be your concluding paragraph would be able to sum up your whole argument so that the reader almost could just go to your final paragraph to get the gist of what you're saying. So I've put some examples here of what to avoid. To conclude, we should all try to get some exercise regularly to stay healthy. Well, yeah, that's not wrong, but it's not very good. If, on the other hand, you tried something like, rather than suffering from obesity and related complications, we should all try to prevent them with regular exercise. Now, the second one is a much stronger sentence. We know it's summing up the paragraph. We know it's summing up the ideas, but it's using more emotive language. Obesity, complications, they're things that people don't want. Again, the reader will probably remember this best. So you should also have a concluding sentence at the end that brings a closure to the paragraph. Something that is really strong, important. It might be emotive, it might be a quote, but it's strong. It's going to stick in their reader's memory. Again, nothing that is repeated. So for each paragraph, identify your key points that are based on your concluding sentence. Remember not to include any information that is not in the body paragraphs, and try and write a final sentence that is going to stick in the reader's mind. So some ideas about this might be a prediction. If you put a prediction in, here you're going to be saying something like, if you follow my line of argument, if you agree with me, the world will be a better place. So you're painting a rosy picture if you follow your directions. The sun will shine brighter, the sky will be bluer if your resolution is adopted. Well, if we put that into our scenario, we were looking about uniforms in our previous, when we were talking about introductions and body paragraphs, you could write something like, if students aren't forced to wear school uniforms, our school will have a much more pleasant and productive environment in which everyone will learn and grow. So you're painting a rosy picture if we get rid of uniforms. Now, you could do the opposite, which can also be quite emotive and work quite well, depending on the sort of essay you want to write. But the second one is the worst case scenario. How bad the world might get. Fear is a very motivating factor. Fear makes people do things. So as a writer, you're striving to make your scenario as frightful as possible without sounding totally ridiculous. But your worst case scenario, if you're talking about the uniform, would be, if students are required to wear uniforms, the environment of our school will become drab and colourless, and the structure of our revered school will be further from a college and closer to a prison. So again, the world will be a worse place if we still enforced uniforms. Some other ways you can make your closing argument count is a question. You can ask a question, make a prediction, ask a question and get the readers to make a prediction. So you make them think, again, like we did with the introduction. People are conditioned to try and answer a question. So if you leave them with a question, that is a good, they will remember. A call to action. This is where actions can be taken by the reader or by those responsible for these issues that demand something be happened. You need to take action. You need to do this if you agree with me. So an example of this is, if you understand how important it is for students to have the right to dress themselves, it is your civic duty to attend our school council meeting and demand that this proposal be rejected. Or what change will you make to your daily exercise routines if you too can lead a healthier, more active life? So both of these, you're calling on people to do something, and they're more likely to remember it. Now, the other one is to pick, like we did at the start, pick a good quotation. Again, if you can get a quotation that fits, especially one by an eminent person, it leaves people thinking. So writing a conclusion, how do we write it? We have a contention, and originally we might have claimed that dogs make better pets. So in the conclusion, we might paraphrase that to dogs make the best pets in the world. To summarize, dogs are cleaner, better at showing affection, and ultimately better to train. So there's our 3 body paragraphs mentioned. And then the super so what, the final closing point, change your life for the better and go get a dog. A call for action. So our final paragraph, if read all together, dogs make the best pets in the world. Dogs are cleaner, better at showing affection, and ultimately better to train. Change your life for the better and go and get a dog. The slogan at the end. People will probably remember that. So to summarize, keep your conclusion brief. In an essay, your concluding paragraph should only be about 3 to 5 sentences long. Be efficient and communicate what you need to say as briefly as possible. Try and choose the best words you can choose. Your first sentence, restate the hypotheses from your introduction, but use different wording. Write maybe 1, 2 sentences, 3 sentences to maximize your key arguments, if you can. Simple, short, and then have 1 or 2 sentences at the end that make a grand statement of a conclusion, a super so what, saying what your final point is, what your final argument is, what you want them to do, where can they go after they've read this essay. So that's basically your concluding paragraph. The other thing, don't forget, these that were shown to you in our last presentation, but all of these phrases to help you pull together points, to help you pull together sentences, are better for cohesion. You want a coherent essay. You want an essay that people don't remember it for the bad writing or the bad grammar or the fact that it didn't really flow together. If they finish reading it, they'll remember all the things that were wrong with it, not the message you tried to get across. So good luck with your persuasive